Hello, my name is Francesco, and today I will talk about assignment 8. So, for part 1 of the assignment rubric, I will first verbally describe my contribution and I will demonstrate the project running. So, my contribution to the code is um, it focuses on pretty much enhancing the realism of the fluid simulation by ensuring that each water particle responds dynamically to the pan's tilt and is properly rendered on screen. I implemented logic that makes every particle adjust its movement based on tilt direction and speed, and it uses a movement multiplier to make the motion more pronounced. Um, then by looping through all particles, I made sure they individually update their position in response to the tilt angle. And this created a more like realistic slash natural flow. Additionally, I handled the rendering process, ensuring that each particle is visually represented and it's correct using OpenGL's GL Vertex 3F function. And yeah, these contributions make the simulation more realistic. Kind of brings it to life a little bit. I mean, it's still not. It's still not. Water is one of the hardest things to represent. Even the most modern of video games, water sometimes doesn't seem too natural. It's just very hard to render it. Um, yeah, so my contributions essentially make the water behave in a way that feels more dynamic and responsive to the user input. Um, Tried our best to make it seem uh, most most like lively, I would say. So yeah, now I will demonstrate the project running. So I have here. Let's get the project running, and sweet. Here we can see the the pan simulation. So we see the water flowing, and when we tilt it to one side, we can see the water going from one side to the other. Um, yeah, and when we reset it, the water occupies more of the pan. And yeah, we use all the angles. The water flows. Yeah, it's very nice seeing it just going from side to side. Whee! Yeah. And yeah, Dr. Sanders, when we were shown the demo, there was some part of the pan that was dripping, um, so yeah, it is still dripping, but we can see how the particles of water move smoothly throughout the edges, simulating that flow. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that. So now we're gonna move on to the part 2 of the video. Uh, when we I'm gonna go to the Word doc and I'm gonna discuss line by line what my code does. Um, Here it is. So moving to the first part of my code, which is these variable declarations. We see the first line, how it creates a new instance of Java's random class. I mean, this is kind of like the built-in dice roller. It's going to be used to generate randomness. Um, and especially in fluid simulations, randomness helps make the motion feel more natural rather than looking too uniform and robotic, as we saw in the demo. Then the second line, we private float movement multiplier. Here we define that variable and set it to 1.5f. This acts as pretty much a speed booster for the particles, making their movement more exaggerated when the pan tilts, as we saw in the demo. If this value was smaller, for example, the particles would move more like sluggishly in response to tilting, but if it was larger, the particles would react more dramatically. Then we have the we pretty much update the particles. So this method is responsible for updating all the particles whenever the pan tilts. It takes in two values. You have tilt x, and which is how much the pan tilts forwards or backwards, and then tilt z, how much the pan tilts left or right. These values will be passed to each particle so they can adjust their movement accordingly. Then for the for loop, I mean, this line for particle, a lot of particles. Yeah, this is essentially a for each loop, meaning that it goes through every single particle in the particles list one by one. Like you can imagine like all of the tiny droplets of water inside the pan, and this loops makes sure each of them gets updated individually. And so for the last line here, now each particle is told to update itself based on the tilt values. This means the particle will adjust its velocity and position in response to how the pan is moving. For example, if the pan tilts forward, the particles will get an extra push in that direction forward, just like real water would do, pretty much. And then finally, for rendering the particles, um, we're looping through all the particles again, but this time it's not about movement, it's about drawing them on the screen. Um, because each particle needs to be rendered in a correct position so we can actually see it. Um, then for the next line, this is an OpenGL function. It pretty much tells the graphics engine like, hey, there's a particle here. It places a point at x, y, and z, and this represents the particle's exact location in the 3D space, like we saw in the demo. And um, since the program is using GL points, each particle is just a small dot on the screen. If if this were a more advanced rendering system, we could literally replace this with something more complex, like a textured droplet. Um, yeah, so many possibilities. And finally, this line closes the drawing block in OpenGL, and it's like saying, okay, like I've told you where all the particles are, so now go ahead and draw them. Without this line, the rendering literally wouldn't finalize, and the particles wouldn't actually appear. So important line as well. So yep, and then yeah, that would be all for today's video. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.